This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Ateli Edwards. Tonight's top stories. South Korea racing to pass a U.S. investment bill after President Trump threatened a 25% tariff hike, accusing Seoul of stalling on a July deal. Now its trade envoy is now heading to Washington for talks. Japan's snap election race is on. Campaigning is underway for the February 8th vote. All 465 lower house seats up for grabs in a make-or-break test for Prime Minister Takaichi's new coalition. And China leaning into Europe. Beijing says it's ready to deepen trust with the UK as Prime Minister Kier Starmer heads to the Chinese capital. President Xi also meeting Finland's leader with energy and tech high on the agenda. The mother of all deals sealed between the EU and India after nearly 20 years of talks amid a fractured world order. The trade pact is expected to create a free trade zone spanning 2 billion people.
I'm Roland Lim at the Asian Financial Forum in Hong Kong. China-linked fundraising is back in the spotlight in the city. Conglomerate CITIC says it's delivering big IPOs and offshore bond numbers, and the People's Bank of China backs deeper offshore renminbi liquidity. We'll break it down, what it means for capital flows.
AI is here for long term. This is the next decade or two. Memory and storage, today, they are not just system components that they were in the years past. Today, they are strategic assets.
And we have insights from Micron's CEO on the global thirst for memory as a U.S. chipmaker breaks ground in Singapore for a $24 billion fabrication facility. South Korea says it will convey its commitment to the U.S. after President Donald Trump ramped up pressure over the implementation of the trade deal. Well, the U.S. leader has threatened to hike tariffs, accusing its Asian ally of not living up to their agreement struck last July. Well, South Korea says it hopes to find a rational solution after Mr. Trump announced that he is raising tariffs on South Korean goods to 25% over the delay, targeting key exports like cars and pharmaceuticals. It's unclear when they would take effect. The presidential office adds that it was not informed about the tariff hike in advance. Seoul's trade envoy says he will be visiting the U.S. soon for talks with his counterpart on the issue. And the trade deal signed in July saw Washington agreeing to cap tariffs at 15% in exchange for Seoul investing $350 billion into America. Well, the agreement has been submitted to South Korea's National Assembly and is currently under review. The ruling Democratic Party says it is seeking to speed up the process and will push for deliberation to start next month.
그리고 또 실질적으로 기업들의 피해를 방지하기 위해서도 그래야 되는 거고요. 그만큼 좀 절실하게 또 성실성 있게 협상에 임할 수 있는 충분한 동기가 있는 거고, 트럼프 행정부 입장에서도 배경이 어떻게 됐든 결과적으로 동맹국들하고 지금은 전반적으로 서로 이견이 있을 수 있는 사항을 원만하게 타결했다는 뭔가의 실적 하나를 또 보여줄 필요가 있는 거예요. 최근에 그 동맹국들하고 관계의 신뢰의 문제가 계속 발생을 하고 있는 듯한 인상을 주고 있는데.
Mr. Trump's move prompting a small rally outside the U.S. Embassy in Seoul. Demonstrators denouncing Washington's plans, calling for an end to what they called interference in internal affairs. Well, the U.S. is South Korea's second largest export destination after China, accounting for more than 17% of outbound shipments, worth nearly $123 billion last year. Well, autos make up the biggest chunk of exports to the U.S. at $30 billion last year. They account for a quarter of all U.S. shipments. Well, top automakers Hyundai Motor and Kier saw their combined quarterly operating profit fell by about $1.4 billion when the U.S. first imposed a 25% tariff in April last year. Well, the trade deal in November saw levies brought down 15%, in line with Japanese and European cars. Well, analysts warn that a return to 25% taxes will slash 2026 operating profits by up to 23%, and more crucially, make South Korean autos less competitive. Now, the other two sectors singled out by Mr. Trump represent a much smaller fraction of South Korean exports. Pharmaceuticals stood at $9.6 billion in 2024, accounting for just 1.4% of all exports. Still, 16% of those were shipped to the U.S., the biggest market. Well, the U.S. was also the top destination for South Korean wood products, though they only make up about $22 million of last year's exports. South Korean investors brushing off President Trump's threat to hike tariffs. The benchmark Kospi stuttered a bit initially, but rebounded soon enough, hitting a new high, closing up nearly 3%. Automakers Hyundai and Kier fell sharply, though, around 5% on prospects of higher tariffs, but pared most of those losses. Hyundai closing down 0.8% and Kier ending about 1.1% in the red. Many investors betting that President Trump's threat is more a negotiating tactic than actual policy, since he did not say when he would hike those tariffs. China says it's ready to build on mutual trust with the UK and deepen cooperation as British Prime Minister Keir Starmer prepares to visit Beijing this week. Ahead of that trip, Mr. Starmer rejected suggestions of a possible negative reaction by the US. In fact, he stressed in an interview with Bloomberg that the UK does not need to pick sides in approaching the two economic powerhouses as he seeks to reset ties with China. Stuart Smith reports for CNA from London.
The UK Prime Minister, Chancellor and Business Secretary are set to lead a delegation to China this week, which will reportedly include high-level representatives of UK businesses and cultural institutions. The government is keeping quiet on the details and expectations, but reportedly there's a particular emphasis on improving the situation for British financial services like insurance and pensions, as well as luxury products like cars, clothing and whiskey. This will be the first visit of a UK Prime Minister to China since 2018. When Chinese and British officials were hailing a golden era of bilateral relations. It was then Beijing bought the Royal Mint Court site in central London to build its controversial new embassy. But since then, successive Conservative governments have grown more wary of Chinese influence in the UK, and planning permission for the site was repeatedly denied. Having now given the green light, this trip is meant to demonstrate London is serious about a new relationship with Beijing, one Keir Starmer said had to be more sophisticated, and one Security Minister, Dan Jarvis, said can be managed.
While some would stick their heads in the sand and ignore the obvious need to engage, this government is engaging with China confidently and pragmatically, recognising the complexity of the world as it is and challenging them where we need to.
Just last month, the UK rebuked China for conducting military exercises around Taiwan, and its companies have been banned from investing in parts of the British economy, like nuclear power plants and sensitive telecoms. But China's investment in renewable energy and infrastructure has been welcomed, and this trip appears aimed as a reset while UK ties with the United States become unpredictable.
I think China understands that the UK is trying to normalize to a certain extent the relationship, not to say that before it wasn't normal, but it's just to say that there's definitely an understanding in China as well that the UK has an interest in at least being more open to the possibility of improving the relationship between the two of them.
While detail from government is lacking, some possible outcomes could be a renewed UK-China CEO Council, including the heads of big Chinese and British companies like AstraZeneca, Rolls-Royce and BP. Other wins for the UK could include a memorandum of understanding on services, the mutual recognition of certain professional qualifications and simpler visa access for tourists and business people. If those are agreed, it would signal a big improvement in ties. But some opposition politicians have slammed the visit. One lawmaker sanctioned by China said Keir Starmer was courting dictatorship. Others are worried about the national security implications of a closer relationship, how the United States may react, and the message it sends to pro-democracy and human rights activists from China who now call the UK their home. For CNA, I'm Stuart Smith in London.
Chinese President Xi Jinping says that his country seeks to uphold the UN-based world order and advance a multipolar world centered on economic globalization. Mr. Xi stressing on Beijing's willingness to work with Finland to achieve that goal as he met with Finnish Prime Minister Petteri Orpo.
这是你第一次以总理身份访华，也是芬兰总理时隔17年再次对中国进行正式访问，相信将为中芬合作注入新动力。建交76年来，无论国际形势如何变化，中芬关系始终平稳发展，值得备。
Mr. Xi in the talks pushed for joint efforts in areas such as energy, agriculture and technology and said he welcomes Finnish companies to, quote, swim freely in China's market. Mr. Orpo also signalled his readiness to work with Beijing.
China has become a very important market for Finnish businesses. To truly flourish, we must together preserve the shared rules-based trade system. It provides the predictability and confidence needed for companies to expand their partnership and pursue sustainable growth.
Mr. Orpo's visit comes amid heightened concerns over Arctic security after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to take control of Greenland. China's footprint in the Arctic is also rapidly growing, with Beijing seeing a need to bolster its stake in the region to become a polar great power by 2030. North Korea has fired what appears to be 2 ballistic missiles that Japan and South Korea believe to be short-range projectiles. The launch took place amid a senior U.S. defense official's visit to South Korea for talks on modernizing the military alliance. South Korea's defense ministry said that the missiles were fired from near North Korean capital Pyongyang and flew about 350 kilometers towards the sea off its eastern coast. Japanese authorities say that the missiles had landed just outside of the country's exclusive economic zone. Now, prior to today's launches, Pyongyang also tested its hypersonic missiles, observed by leader Kim Jong-un. Analysts say that such weapons tests are part of North Korea's efforts to grow its military capabilities against Seoul and Washington, and to evaluate armaments before potentially exporting them to Russia. Our time now for a short break, but coming up next on East Asia Tonight, how mainland Chinese companies are building their global footprints. CNA's Roland Lim has more from the Asian Financial Forum in Hong Kong. Hello again. You are just in time for a business update. It is day 2 of the Asian Financial Forum in Hong Kong. Investors and business leaders are charting the way forward as geopolitics threatens global growth. Well, let's go live to Roland Lim now in Hong Kong. So, Roland, we are hearing a lot about China-linked fundraising and the renminbi today. So, essentially, what is the message coming out of the forum about capital flows in this more fragmented world?
Well, I'll tell you, there's a clear theme emerging from the Asian Financial Forum today that Hong Kong pitching itself as a cross-border capital hub for the world where supply chains and economic relationships are being rewritten. Have a listen.
Geopolitics and supply chain reconfiguration. Geoeconomic fragmentation is reshaping economic relationships and driving businesses to diversify production networks, balancing efficiency with resilience. For businesses, the key question is far more than where is the cheapest, but where is secure, scalable, sustainable, and cost competitive.
持续完善跨境金融特色的服务体系，助力更多企业登陆国际资本市场。2025年，中信2家券商合计港股 IPO 承销规模近90亿美元，成功落地宁德时代、蓝思科技等一系列标杆项目。中资离岸债券承销规模超过128亿美元，位居市场第一。
So, You heard that as well from CITIC Group President Zhang Wenwu, who says that CITIC will keep improving its cross-border financial services to help more enterprises access international capital markets. He also pointed out the group's deal numbers, as you heard there, in 2025. So the message is that China-linked fundraising pipeline is active and Hong Kong remains the key platform. And finally, there's also focus on the renminbi. Now, Hong Kong aims to be a global hub for renminbi internationalization, especially after the People's Bank of China and the Hong Kong Monetary Authority doubled yuan funding under a swap facility to 200 billion yuan following strong demand. So the RMB business facility, that provides cheaper, stable yuan funding, so banks can offer financing not just for corporates but also for faster settlement as an increasingly financing currency.
So, Roland, I believe you also spoke to Hong Kong Trade Development Council Chairman Frederick Ma. Basically, what is his verdict on how AFF is going so far? And also, what is he trying to achieve with this new Global Business Summit?
Yes, the HKTDC Chairman Fred Ma calling the early response to this year's AFF quite good, he said. And he even noticed that late into the first day that the halls were still roughly 3/4 to 85% full. That's a sign, in his view, that interest is holding up throughout the AFF program. Now, Mr. Ma also explained why the forum introduced a new Global Business Summit this year. The goal, he says, is to broaden the conversation beyond financing to bring in industry leaders from areas like AI, robotics, biopharma, healthcare, and consumer markets. Have a listen to my earlier conversation with him.
We have over 3,600 attendees, and we have 150 speakers from finance to, business to politicians coming to the forum to speak. And we have already arranged some 300 deal-making meetings. So I would say, without finishing the session yet, I would say the initial response has been good.
You've added a new Global Business Summit, connecting finance to the real economy. What sort of problems are you trying to solve here? Is it funding gaps? Is it market access? Or is it just basically trying to speed up partnerships?
The world is changing all the time. So we need to make some changes to attract, people to come. And along the theme of finance empower businesses, so we introduce this Global Business Summit and invite not just people from the financial world to come to the conference, but also businesses. Therefore, we have AI, robotic, biopharma, healthcare, consumer market, all these prominent business people come to the conference to talk about it.
Let me follow up on that. Geopolitics and supply chains changing. How are companies adapting? How are they operating? What are you hearing on the ground?
Indeed, these days, the only certainty is uncertainty. So as a result, all business people have to really rethink their strategy. They have to look at supply chain, and indeed, actually, a lot of changes have happened along these lines already. So this is the opportune time for them to congregate and talk about and share about their insight, what to do, what do they see. And that is why I think this year we have an overwhelming response to the forum.
Firms still doing China Plus One? Are they doing reshoring? Are they still building regional hubs? Where does Hong Kong fit into all of this?
Hong Kong is a super connector. And to be honest, because of the geopolitical situation, many companies are now facing a lot of uncertainty. And they would be staying away from the traditional market like the US, Europe. So they have to look for new places to invest, look for new places to do business. And China, with the vast market, is definitely a choice. On top of it, ASEAN, Middle East. So as a result, they are all looking at new markets. And Hong Kong is the best platform for you as a business person to look at the China market.
So the big takeaway from today's summit isn't just optimism, it's also pragmatism. Where can you find capital, confidence and connections in a more uncertain world? Well, Hong Kong is using this forum to argue that it can still be that meeting point where international investors and mainland businesses actually do deals, form joint ventures and move projects forward. Rosalie.
Many thanks for that report. Roland Lim, live in Hong Kong at the Asian Financial Forum. Right, a quick check now on markets in Greater China. It is slightly soft on the mainland. The Shanghai Composite up by 0.2%. Shenzhen component up by 0.1%. Hang Seng doing a bit better, rising 1.35%, led by insurers. Investors also digesting the latest factory data. China's industrial profits rose unexpectedly in December as factory output shows signs of life. But a more challenging base effect and lackluster demand still dragged on its full-year performance. A Chinese state-owned miner, Zijin Mining, is set to acquire Toronto-listed Allied Gold in an all-cash deal valued at about $4 billion as gold prices hit record highs. Zijin is offering roughly $32.5 per share, a 5% premium to buy Allied's African assets across Mali, Ivory Coast and Ethiopia. Now, Allied holds more than 530 metric tons of gold resources and could lift annual output to 25 tons by 2029. The deal would give Zijin control of 12 large gold mines worldwide, pending regulatory approvals. Right, a quick check now on gold prices. It is trading at $5,094 per ounce this hour after breaking through the 5,100 mark for the first time in the previous session. Well, Chinese sportswear giant Anta Sports is buying a controlling stake in German brand Puma for nearly $1.8 billion as it steps up its global expansion. Anta will acquire 29% of Puma from the Pinot family's Artemis Group, paying a more than 60% premium to the stock's last close. Well, the company says the deal will strengthen its international footprint and brand recognition, including in China. While Anta has no immediate plans for a full takeover, it says it may deepen the partnership in future as Puma works to revive sales after recent declines. SK Hynix shares rallying, closing up nearly 9% at a record after reports that it will be the sole supplier of advanced memory for Microsoft's new AI chip. Meantime, local media say each Maya 200 accelerator will use 6 units of SK Hynix's HBM3E memory. The South Korean firm hasn't confirmed the reports yet, but its stock has surged this year on strong AI demand, lifting its market value to nearly $400 billion. Citigroup also raised its price target sharply, citing improving memory prices and stronger earnings prospects. Well, breaks up next, but coming up on East Asia tonight, campaigning begins for Japan's lower house election. As Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi seeks a strong mandate to implement her policies. Indian and European leaders say they have sealed a trade deal after nearly 2 decades of negotiations. This is East Asia tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. South Korea accelerates its push to pass a U.S. investment bill after President Trump threatened a 25% tariff hike over delays to a trade deal struck in July. Seoul's trade envoy is heading to Washington for talks, seeking what he calls a rational solution. Campaigning underway in Japan in a make-or-break test for Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's new coalition. All 465 lower house seats are up for grabs in the 8th of February vote. And China says it is ready to build on mutual trust with the UK and deepen cooperation as British Prime Minister Kier Starmer prepares to visit Beijing this week. Well, campaigning has begun for Japan's snap election, set for 8th of February, with 1,285 candidates registered, according to public broadcaster NHK. They will vie for 465 seats in the lower house in what's being seen as a critical political test for Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, whose ruling bloc held a razor-thin majority before the dissolution of the Diet. Well, CNA senior correspondent Michio Ishida has more.
Candidates hit the street on the first day of official campaigning for Japan's lower house elections. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi held her first rally in Akihabara in Tokyo in a break from tradition, with leaders from a ruling Liberal Democratic Party usually starting their campaign trail in Fukushima in the wake of the 2011 nuclear accident. She laid out the party's platform, such as ensuring food and energy security. Ms. Takaichi also tried to tamp down concerns over narrowing ties with Japan's largest trading partner, China, amid a diplomatic spat sparked by her comment on a Taiwan contingency in November.
私自身も外務大臣も経済産業大臣もちょっとでも海外の閣僚と会う人、海外の首脳と会う人、今何に取り組んでいるか、力を合わせてとにかく特定の国に頼らないサプライチェーンを一緒に作ろう。
Ms. Takaichi campaigned alongside her new coalition partner, the Japan Innovation Party. She has said she is calling the elections to seek a fresh mandate and will step down if the ruling bloc fails to win a majority.
トランプ大統領、習近平、プーチン大統領、誰がまともに渡り合うんですか？野田さんですか？斉藤さんですか？違います。ここにいる高市さんなんですよ、皆さん。
でもそんな不安定な状況で力強く政策を進めることはできない。だから自民党、日本維新の会、この2つの政党で何としても過半数取らせてください。
The two parties formed their coalition in October after LDP's longtime ally, Komeito, broke off their partnership over the LDP slush fund scandal. Komeito then joined hands with the largest opposition, Constitutional Democratic Party, this month. The new centrist Reform Alliance is fielding more than 200 candidates, the highest number after the LDP. It has pledged to reduce the consumption tax, a key issue in this election. It has called for clarity in political donations in a swipe at the LDP. The support base of LDP's new coalition partner, the Japan Innovation Party, is mostly in Osaka. In contrast, its former ally, Komeito, has a nationwide network backed by Buddhist group Soka Gakkai. Analysts say the shift in political alliances may impact votes come Election Day on 8th of February. Also seeking to gain seats is the Democratic Party for the People. The party is fielding more than 100 candidates, more than twice as many compared to the 2024 election. It raised the need for economic measures to tackle rising costs of living, with $115 billion budget to fund key economic measures yet to be implemented.
突然の解散となりました。総理の専権事項とはいえ、一言で言うと経済後回し解散になってしまっているなと思います。
Candidates will be elected for a 4-year term. Michio Ishida, CNA, Tokyo.
Well, Ms. Takaichi says that an alliance with the U.S. would collapse if Japan turned away while U.S. forces were attacked during a Taiwan crisis. Well, she said on national TV that if something serious happens in Taiwan, Japan would need to rescue Japanese and American citizens from the island. She added that there could be cases where Japan and the U.S. take joint action. She stressed that any response would be strictly within the limits of the law, based on a comprehensive assessment of the situation on the ground. Well, she made those remarks after an opposition party criticized her for igniting tensions with China over her recent remarks on the island. Well, last November, the Japanese Prime Minister suggested that Tokyo could take military action if China attacked Taiwan. Ties between Japan and China have been strained since. China, which claims Taiwan as its own, has repeatedly demanded Japan retract those remarks. Ms. Takaichi has stopped short of doing that. Indian and European leaders hailing a historic trade deal after nearly 2 decades of on and off negotiations. The breakthrough comes as both sides look to diversify trade ties in the face of U.S. tariffs and Chinese export controls. EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen says the, quote, mother of all deals would create a free trade zone of 2 billion people. The bloc is due to double its exports to India by 2032, with Delhi promising to slash tariffs in nearly 97% of European goods. Prime Minister Narendra Modi says that the deal will cover about 25% of the global gross domestic product.
यह एफटीए भारत और यूरोपियन यूनियन के बीच इन्वेस्टमेंट को बूस्ट करेगा, नई इनोवेशन पार्टनरशिप बनाएगा और वैश्विक स्तर पर सप्लाई चेन को मजबूत करेगा। यानी यह सिर्फ ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट नहीं है, यह साझा समृद्धि का नया ब्लूप्रिंट है।
This trade will integrate further our supply chain and strengthen our joint manufacturing power. It will cut up to 4 billion euros in annual tariffs for exporters of all sizes. And it will create good jobs for millions of workers here in India and in Europe.
Well, Neha Punia for CNA joins us now live from New Delhi. So, Neha, Indian and EU leaders clearly expanding market access significantly with this trade deal. So, basically, what have they agreed on?
You know, we've heard the word historic quite a bit this Tuesday afternoon, Otelli. Both sides hailing this as, a win-win deal that will help expand market access for European manufacturers and exporters, as well as Indian manufacturers and exporters. You heard what the Prime Minister said, that this is one of the largest trade deals in the world because of its scope. And, we're being told this will create a trade zone that encompasses 2 billion people. Of course, ratification will follow, and the trade deal is only expected to kick in at some point next year. But here's what both sides have agreed to do. The trade deal will help double bilateral trade in the next 5 years. And that's important because the EU is already one of India's largest trading partners. As you said, what India has done is it's agreed to remove or eliminate tariffs in value of more than 90% of all EU exports to India. This will lead to a lot of savings, like Ursula von der Leyen was saying, for European products, and will also give, European products like wine, automobiles, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, unfettered access to the Indian market. And, the European side telling a lot of reporters attending that event today that this is unfettered access, something New Delhi has not done with other trading partners. And that's why it's so significant. From the Indian side, it's going to be a big boost for labor-intensive sectors like the leather sector, textiles, gems. All of these sectors have been feeling the pain of steep American tariffs. So it's welcome news for them. And the liberalization of tariffs of up to 99% will help exports worth $33 billion from these sectors to get into the European market. There's also going to be no tariffs on marine products, footwear, chemicals, toys, etc. And what the Indian Prime Minister said is that it'll be a huge shot in the arm for the Indian manufacturing sector. There's also a mobility agreement that has been signed that'll make it easier for skilled and semi-skilled Indian workers to go and work in the European Union and help European countries with labor shortages. All of this, of course, beg your pardon, being done with an eye to foster mutual prosperity, as both leaders have repeatedly stressed.
But Neha, when it comes to challenges, though, how do you think India is planning to tackle them at a time of uncertainty over challenges from leading economies, China and the US?
We've heard a lot of, slight references to the ongoing global geopolitical chaos and instability. You had Prime Minister Narendra Modi saying it's not just a trade agreement, but a blueprint for shared prosperity. You had Ursula von der Leyen saying it's a deal that signals rules-based trade cooperation still delivers great outcomes, and it's aimed at reducing dependencies at a time when trade is being weaponized and supply chains are being weaponized, both sides making indirect references to Beijing and Washington, D.C. And, we've seen how this is a trade deal that's been nearly 2 decades in the making. But in the last 6 months is when trade talks really picked up. Both sides agreed to keep problem areas like agriculture, steel tariffs, etc., off the table to ensure this deal is pushed through, because they both stand at great risk because of trade tensions with China and the US. In that regard, India's also offered a lot more access than it would have traditionally offered. And one, sector that stands out in that light is the automobile sector. India is promising to bring tariffs down from 110% to about 40%, with an aim to eventually bring it down even further to 10%. And this is a big boost for European car makers. There are questions about competitiveness, though, because while it gives them access to the Indian market much more than it did earlier, this is a price-sensitive market. These companies will be competing with Asian giants like Suzuki and Toyota, and the Indian consumer is a discerning consumer. It doesn't want to spend too much, but it's still about access to a market that has been previously closed off. And the signal here clearly being that both sides want to do business together, that there is a way to find a win-win solution to trade deals, and tariffs, etc., should not be used as a form of weapon, and that these countries have options and partners that they can turn to in such difficult times.
Hey, many thanks for that report. Neha Punia for CNA in New Delhi. Now, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has warned that Europe cannot defend itself without the US, after tensions over Greenland put Europe's security ties with Washington in focus. Well, Donald Trump previously threatened tariffs against several European countries over the Arctic island before withdrawing them later after talks with the NATO chief. William Denslow reports from Brussels.
Following US President Donald Trump's threat of imposing tariffs on 8 European powers should Greenland not be given over to the US, the European Parliament put on hold a decision to ratify the US-EU trade agreement brokered between the two sides last year. The Parliamentary Trade Committee has met to discuss whether to bring that deal forward. They say no decision has been made of yet, punting it for the coming days. Once again, further evidence that despite President Trump taking this tariff threat off the table, lingering tensions remain in transatlantic ties. Despite those divisions, Mark Rutte, NATO's Secretary General, has addressed MEPs here in Brussels, where he said that Donald Trump deserves a lot of praise. Now, he says there are 2 tracks going forward when it comes to Arctic security and indeed the future of Greenland. The first track, he says, is that all members of the NATO military alliance must do more to bolster collective security in the Arctic region. He said the second matter, that of Greenland and Greenland's sovereignty, that is between Denmark, Greenland and US officials to hammer out. But he again said that this issue of security is absolutely vital and needs to be addressed.
There is an issue with the Arctic region. There is an issue of collective security because these sea lanes are opening up and because the Chinese and the Russians are more and more active. China, of course, not bordering on the Arctic, but as you know, very much being involved there together with the Russians.
For its part, the European Union has committed to do more when it comes to bolstering collective security in the Arctic region, and also to provide more support for Greenland going forward. They have pledged to roughly double their investment in Greenland, things like clean energy as well as infrastructure going forward. And we know that the Commissioner for International Partnerships has been speaking with Greenlandic and Danish officials to discuss this partnership.
The idea really is to discuss the partnership that we have with Greenland
to underline the pipelines of projects that we already have in Greenland in different sectors, such as natural resources, renewable energy, and in the digital sector as well.
There is a recognition amongst European powers that more needs to be done to bolster collective security in the Arctic region, including in Greenland. An overriding message is simple, that issues regarding sovereignty of Greenland must be left up to Greenland and indeed Denmark to decide for themselves. For CNA, I'm William Denslow in Brussels.
Coming up on East Asia tonight, Micron CEO in a CNA exclusive says AI is here to stay.
You have to believe in AI. AI is here in the very, very early innings. AI is here for long term. This is the next decade or two. Memory and storage today, they are not.
Plus, Mexico's army is calling for reinforcements, and it has nothing to do with the military. U.S. chipmaker Micron Technology is expected to create about 1,600 jobs in Singapore. Well, it's investing $24 billion over 10 years in a new advanced wafer fabrication facility. Roles include fab engineering, integrated AI, and advanced robotics. Micron says the factory will help address growing demand for flash memory. CNA's Ivy Chalk has more.
I'm standing at what will become Singapore's first double-story wafer manufacturing facility. And built by Micron, it will provide about 700,000 square feet of clean room space, with production scheduled to begin in second half of 2028. Micron says this will help the company to meet growing demand driven by AI and data-centric applications. Located at Woodlands, the new plant is part of Micron's existing manufacturing complex. About 98% of Micron's flash memory chips are manufactured here in Singapore. The expansion will provide a boost to production of such chips, which help to power AI systems.
The double-story design maximizes land efficiency while providing the clean room space needed for future technology transitions. By leveraging Singapore's world-class universities and a robust research and AI ecosystem, supported by A-STAR, local semiconductor partners, and national AI initiatives, this facility will serve as an innovation engine, accelerating our time to market and powering the breakthroughs needed for tomorrow.
Speaking at the groundbreaking ceremony, Deputy Prime Minister Gan Kim Yong says the expansion is a vote of confidence in Singapore as a trusted hub, not just in facilities, but also capabilities and talent. Mr. Gan adds that Micron's move aligns closely with Singapore's strategy to grow the semicon industry. It will also mitigate global supply chain disruptions and help boost tech advancements.
This advanced and highly automated facility will also create good jobs for Singaporeans. This is how we seek to grow competitive industries in Singapore, not only by anchoring global leaders, but also by training our people in industry-leading capabilities and creating strong career pathways over time. Micron's expansion will also open up new opportunities for SMEs in Singapore.
Micron says the new plant will also meet green standards, such as having energy-efficient systems and water recycling. Besides this facility, Micron is also building an advanced packaging plant for high-bandwidth memory that started construction last year.
CNA's Sarah Al-Khaldi sat down with Micron CEO Sanjay Mehrotra for an exclusive interview, and he gave his thoughts on the current AI boom, chip supply and demand, and doing business with China.
You have to believe in AI. AI is here in the very, very early innings. AI is here for long term. This is the next decade or two. Memory and storage today, they are not just system components that they were in the years past. Today, they are strategic assets. They are strategic assets in terms of enabling the performance of the AI systems, in terms of enabling their capabilities, from large language models that are used in training to AI at inference across the edge. Memory and storage is absolutely critical. So the long-term trajectory of AI and memory and storage that is a critical enabler today of AI is really strong.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of demand from AI for memory, and some analysts are expecting a squeeze, a demand, a supply squeeze until next year. How do you, though, ensure that there won't be oversupply, and how do you prevent a glut in the future? Yeah,
so for us, we had said in 25 that supply is tight in terms of all the demand in 25, and we have said that supply will be even tighter in 26. And we have recently, in our last earnings call in December, said that we see tightness going into 2027 as well. So what's important for us is to ensure that we have clean room space availability so that we can address our customers' demand requirements. Of course, we work very closely with our customers, looking at their demand projections and bringing up our supply in line with demand. Today, that supply is very short. And as I said, we see that shortage continuing into 2027 as well. In the medium term, we see that we are able to support some of the demand from our key customers only at 50 to 2/3 level. So we, of course, are very much focused on making the necessary investments to increase the supply capability to address the growing demand for memory and storage as AI is fueling this demand for the future.
Yeah, the industry, the semiconductor industry, has been known for boom-bust cycles, but now with this AI demand that we are seeing, do you think this will smoothen that out quite a bit?
Memory and storage now has become a strategic asset for AI. And of course, this is very different from what it was in the past. Let me give you an example. There is high bandwidth memory, and high bandwidth memory takes up about 3 times to 4 times as many wafers to produce the same number of gigabits as conventional DRAM. And that high bandwidth memory, we project that by 2028 timeframe, it will be a $100 billion industry. Previous projections were that that would be a $100 billion industry by 2030 timeframe. Given the AI acceleration and the value of memory in AI systems, that now is pulled into the 2028 timeframe.
Your share price has done well despite the geopolitical volatility. How do you balance your China business given Washington's tech stance?
You know, we are a global supplier for our solutions. You know, memory and storage is critical for all AI systems worldwide, and Micron is present with our leading customers on a global basis. Of course, we always abide by the laws and regulations everywhere, and we are innovation partners with some of the customers in the China market as well.
Finally, BTS fever going global after the boy band announced concerts for their comeback across dozens of cities worldwide. But in Mexico, the ticket shortage has gone all the way to the highest office in the land. Well, the new tour beginning in April launched a worldwide scramble for tickets. Tickets in Mexico were selling from $100 but quickly appeared on resale platforms for more than a staggering $5,000. Now, the K-pop megastars will perform 3 shows in Mexico City in May. All 150,000 seats sold out within minutes when they went on sale last weekend. The Mexican president says nearly 1 million people tried to get a ticket. The demand is so strong that she has written directly to South Korea, asking for BTS to hold more shows in Mexico.
Entonces ya les contaré cuál es la respuesta del primer ministro de Corea. Pero es por los jóvenes y las jóvenes de México. Esta solicitud diplomática de manera muy respetuosa que estamos haciendo al primer ministro de Corea.
The chart-topping band is returning to the stage after a hiatus from mandatory military service. But the Kier cultural power proves enduring. Even President Lee Jae-myung recently garnered widespread attention, jamming together with Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi to the band's song Dynamite. Mr. Lee has described the K-pop industry as a key pillar for his country's global cultural influence. And that wraps up Tuesday's edition of East Asia Tonight. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia. Thanks for watching.